In this lesson, you will be finding the surface area and lateral area of prisms and cylinders. Surface area is the sum of the areas of all its surfaces. So if you take all the different faces of the prism and find the area of each one and add it together, you'll get the surface area. A general formula that works for all prisms is that the surface area is equal to the perimeter of the base times the height plus 2 times the area of the base. This piece right here is going to be like the big rectangle that wraps around the two bases. And I'll show you what this looks like with some models in class tomorrow. And then this, of course, is the two bases, the top and the bottom. When you put those together, you get the total surface area. The lateral surface area is the surface area not including the bases. So if you get rid of this part of the formula and just do the perimeter of the base times the height, that will be the lateral surface area. It's the big rectangle that will wrap around the two bases to make the prism. So once again, the formula for lateral area is just that first part of the surface area formula. Our first example has you finding the lateral and surface area of a rectangular prism. I'm going to go ahead and write down the formula for surface area. Surface area equals the perimeter of the base times the height. That's going to give you this big rectangle that wraps around the two bases, plus 2 times the area of the base. And since the base is a rectangle, this big B is going to be length times width of the base. So I'm going to just write that above it. So the surface area is going to equal the perimeter of the base. So it's going to be 5 plus 3 plus 5 plus 3. Times how tall it is, or the distance between the two bases. So that's going to be multiplied by 4. And then we're going to add to that 2 times the area of the base. And the base is a rectangle, and its length times width, 5 times 3 is what's going to go there. Now, when we go to calculate the surface area, you could go and just type this entire thing into your calculator using the parentheses and all the operations. However, since we also want to find the lateral area, remember, is this piece right here. So I'm going to go ahead and calculate just this piece first. So 5 plus 5 plus 3 plus 3, that's 16 times 4. Sixteen times 4 is 64. And then I'm going to go ahead and calculate this piece here. 5 times 3 is 15, and 15 times 2 is 30. So when I add those two pieces together, that's going to give us the total surface area, 64 plus 30, which is 94. And since we're talking about area, it's going to be in square units, so 94 yards squared. That's the surface area. The lateral area, I'm going to call it LA for lateral area, that's going to equal just this part here, the perimeter times the height. So it's this piece, the 64. .64 yards squared. Now our next figure is a triangular prism. This one sometimes confuses kids because they'll try and trick you by laying it down on its side. Some students think this right here is the height of the prism, but really it's not. Remember, the height of the prism is the distance between two bases. So if this triangle is one of the bases, and then this one back here is the other, the height is actually 7. Let's go ahead and write down the formula. Surface area is equal to the perimeter of the base times the height of the prism plus 2 times the area of the base. And since the base is a triangle, we're going to do base times height of the triangle divided by 2, or base times height times 1/2. So in this particular problem, the perimeter of the base is 6 plus 8 plus 10. multiplied by the height of the prism, which is 7. And then we're going to add to that 2 times the area of the base. And the base is going to be 6 times 8, the base and height of the triangle, divided by 2. But then we're going to turn around and multiply it by 2 since we have 2 of them. All right, so now let's go ahead and calculate these two pieces. 10 plus 8 plus 6, that's 24. And 24 times 7, that's 168. Plus the area of the base, 6 times 8 is 48, divided by 2 is 24. But then we're going to turn around and multiply it by 2 since there's 2 of them. So we're going to be back to 48. Now we're going to go ahead and add those two things together. 168 plus 48, that's 216 inches squared. And then the lateral area, remember, is just this rectangle that would wrap around those two triangles. That's this part of our formula. So it's 168 inches squared. Now our last figure is going to be a cylinder. A cylinder has two circular bases, and then there's a big rectangle that's wrapped around it. Think of it like a label on the soup can. The general formula, once again, is surface area equals the perimeter of the base times the height plus 2 times the area of the base. Since we're talking about a circle, the perimeter of a circle, remember, is the circumference, and the circumference of a circle is pi d. So the surface area is going to equal pi times diameter times the height plus 2 times the area of the base. And since it's a circle, it's going to be pi r squared, since that's the area of a circle. Now let's go ahead and plug stuff in. In place of pi, we're going to put 3.14. Remember, that's just an approximation for pi. Pi is an irrational number that keeps going without repeating. So 3.14 times the diameter, which is all the way across the circle, that's going to be 8. And then times the height. The height is the distance between the two bases. So that's going to be multiplied by 9 4/10. And then plus 2 times pi, which is 3.14, times the radius. The radius is going to be halfway across, which is going to be 4. So times 4 squared. Now, obviously, you're going to get the most accurate answer if you were to use the pi key, but we're going to use 3.14 since that's what they often ask for when you take a test. Also, depending on the problem, you would get a more accurate answer if you just put the whole thing into your calculator and do the rounding at the end. But we're going to go ahead and do this just the two separate pieces since we want the lateral area too. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply 3.14 times 8 times 9.4. That's 236.128. So to the nearest tenth, I'm going to just go ahead and round that to the nearest tenth. 236.1. And then the second piece, 2 times 3.14 times 4 squared. That's 100.48, or about 100.5. Now when we add those two things together, 236.1 plus 100.5, you get 336.6 meters squared. And then the lateral area is, remember, this big rectangle that wraps around. It's this piece here, the perimeter times the height. which is the 236.1, 236 and 1/10 meters squared. Now by rounding in the different places here, if these were larger numbers, you may end up off by a little bit, but we're going to just call it close enough on these.